In this video, I want to talk more about working with curves inside the animation view in Unity. Now, a little while ago, we had like the world's most amazing animation, where we had this sphere that was moving and rotating and scaling.
Yeah, but we got some letters saying it was just too awesome. I mean, we had some complaints from very powerful animation houses.
Yeah.
And said we had to get rid of it because we were making them look bad.
Yeah, we were threatening some people with it. So we've completely removed all of the keyframes that were on that animation, and we're going to start over using a much simpler animation just to drive the point home when working with these curves. So let's go under Window and open up the animation view, and I'll kind of drag this over here off to the side. What we're going to do is just pick on animating position Y. So I'll click our record button, and we'll just drop down our base keyframe by clicking on the add keyframe button. I'll make sure we have position Y selected first so it knows what to key. Now we've created our first keyframe for position. I'll come up here to 2 seconds, which is really more than enough to get the point across, and we'll lift this guy up into the air. Now let's frame up on our curve. We see it going up. Now I'm going to hold down our control key and roll with the mouse wheel to open up a little more room in the timeline. Now we'll come over here to 4 seconds, and we'll just pull this guy back down. So something close to where he was. So now I have a really simple curve that just designates the ball going up and coming back down. Very, very simple. Now from here, let's take a look at our curve behavior. Now, immediately the animation view jumped out to show us all 3 of our curves. I don't really want to do that. We're just going to stay focused primarily on position Y, so I'll select position Y and tap F. Now, there are a lot of different places where we can work with our curves. One location is right here on the curve itself. We can right-click on any one of these keyframes, and we can change some aspects of its behavior. I'll talk about these here in just a moment, but actually I got a little bit carried away. I want to take just a moment and talk about adding keyframes first. We've already seen in the previous videos how when we're in record mode, we can change our values either right in the scene view or inside the inspector, and that in turn will drop a keyframe, very much like auto key mode inside of your favorite animation package. We've also seen where, even just a second ago, where we can click on the Add Keyframe button. But there's another way to add keyframes. We can just right-click right here on any part of the curve and click Add Key, and that'll add a keyframe. Now, is there any other ways you can think of?
Yeah, if you look on position Y, to the very right we have that little green dot, which is color-coded for our curve. If we click on that, we'll get another menu.
And this allows you access to adding or deleting curves, adding or deleting keys, as well as some of those other options we saw in the right-click menu when we right-clicked on the key. Now, currently, we cannot add a key. It's because we already have one here. But what we can do is slide the time slider over to an empty location where there is not already a keyframe, and we can choose Add Key, and there you go. Now, let's go ahead and remove those out. So right-click, choose Delete, and then right-click and delete a second time, and there we go. So now we're back to just the plain Jane 3 keyframes. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, or I may have mentioned, if I didn't mention, I intended to mention, I don't really want this to turn into a great big involved course over animation in a tiny little video over working with keys, but there are some things about keyframe curves in general, function curves, that you should just know about. And that is, one of the first things is that the curvature of these curves, the way that they're drawn in between the keyframes, does control the motion, and you can in turn control that curvature using tangent handles.
Right. Once you start studying animation, if you're really going to get into it, definitely recommend picking up a book on it. There's a lot of things you can get into. The shape of the curve is actually going to control the timing of your animation.
That's right. So even though we have a curve down here where the ball is at one location and then, of course, another keyframe which is lifted up into the air, it's actually the flow of this curve which tells the ball to slow down as it gets to the top of this location and then speed back up as it goes back down, which is why when we hit play, that's the kind of behavior we get. It slows down, then speeds back up on the way down.
And the technical term for it is called easing.
Right, and this is all because the curve is interpolating the location of these 3 points. Now, you're going to hear words like that a lot as you get deeper into animation, things like interpolate or ease in and ease out. And again, I don't want to get too far into that. There's so many different resources, even right here on 3dbuzz.com, that you can learn that kind of thing from. So going back over to curves, if I right-click on any one of these keyframes, First off, we have auto-style tangents. This gives us no tangent handles. This is just an automatic calculation where Unity is automatically calculating what the shape of this curve should be, just kind of automatically smoothing it out.
Right. It's trying to give you a smooth result, though as you get more complicated with more keyframes, you can get some very erratic looking keys, therefore some very erratic animation.
Now what we're going to do is switch this over to free smooth, and this gives us tangent handles. Now, using tangent handles, we can do something that's a little interesting. Now, if you're already an animator, I'll be the first to admit this is really old stuff, and you've seen it probably a million times before. But by adjusting these tangent handles, you'll see we're changing the shape of the curve, which will in turn change our animation. In fact, if I do something really crazy like this and hit play, our ball actually goes down, flies up, and then comes back down. So really crazy motion out of that, even though we haven't changed the value of our keyframes at all. So that's kind of the whole basis behind tangent handles. They allow you to change your animation just by controlling how we interpolate from one keyframe to the next. Now, all of that said, that's the free smooth mode. And the reason that's called free smooth is that we have the ability to freely change this tangent handle by rocking it back and forth. However, it's going to always remain smooth. Both of these two handles, and there are two of them, there's one on the left and one on the right, they're always going to remain perfectly straight from one another.
Yeah, they're locked together.
Now, if we right-click, we can switch over to flat, and that'll flatten that out. It's very nice if you need a nice general transition to no motion and then come back down to speeding back up. Or we can choose broken. Now, broken didn't change anything, but watch when I try to move one of these handles now. We can point them in two separate locations. And this is great if you need kind of like a halt in your motion. So right now what we'd have is we'd speed up, kind of level off for a minute, and then fly up to our altitude and stop for just a split nanosecond, and then we would ease back down. So if we hit play, fly up, thunk, and you can almost feel it. Now I realize we're capturing this video at 10 frames a second. So seeing every single nuance of the animation will be a little bit tricky at that frame rate. But if you were creating a similar shaped curve on your end, you'd actually be able to kind of feel. It's almost like that ball has impacted something up there at the top. Now, moving along, let's go ahead and stop playing. We can right-click. Now, we can also change the behavior of these tangents from free over to linear and constant on the left side, on the right side, or both together. So let's take a quick look at doing this. Currently these are set to free, which means we can take these tangent handles and move them however we want. But if I set this over to linear, you'll see what this does. It just points straight back to the last keyframe. And because I chose it for left, it only changed it on the left-hand side of the keyframe. Alternatively, I could change it just to the right over to linear, and now we have a true linear curve. If I play this, we go up at a constant rate, we come down at a constant rate. And each time we do, it's going to feel kind of like it's bouncing or hitting a surface of some sort. It's a very abrupt change in direction. Now, I'm going to grab this. We can change this over to constant as well, but I'll do that for both tangents. So we'll go ahead and just click constant, and now what constant does is this just holds a value. So we start off at the bottom until the next keyframe, then we flash right up to the top over the course of a single frame, we hold that, and then we jump back down. This is a great way to cause blinking. So you see, boom, and we flick back up here, and then we flick back down. Not something I would ever use to animate motion.
No, but it's good for lights.
Yeah, it's really good if you need to make a light blink on and off. So that's how you'd want to do that. Now let's right click and we'll set these back over to auto, and that smooths all of that out. So that's just a quick look at changing the various tangent types available to your curves. Really, this is more intended for those of you who are already familiar with animation, though I did throw a couple of pointers out there if you're totally new to this kind of thing. But that's everything I wanted to cover here, and that is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.